Welcome to 39-minute conversations. Please wait for your host to begin this meeting. Your meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, are you there? Can you see me? Can you hear me? I can see you. I can't hear you. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Now I can hear you. There we go. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
I am excited to chat with you and get to your introduction and all those wonderful things. But the first thing I do have to do is get through a quick ad read. I hope you understand. I apologize. This is always such an awkward part. Today's episode of 39-Minute Conversations is not officially presented by Father's Day. Yes, Father's Day was a couple days ago, but in true Father's Day tradition, I forgot to record this ad last week. So what we have here today is a late Father's Day ad. And is there anything that says Father's Day more than doing something half-assed and doing it late? If you're a regular listener to this podcast for some reason, you've heard me do ads for my father before, a realtor in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But this ad isn't about the great deals he can find you on beautiful houses on the Intercoastal Waterway, beachfront condos, homes overlooking the wonderful golf courses. No, this isn't an ad for the Myrtle Beach lifestyle that's waiting for you, the fresh seafood, the buzzing nightlife, the chill mornings with sand between your toes. This ad isn't about the simple fact that from Little River down to Polly's Island, there's no better realtor than Tim Arnold, timbeachrealtor@gmail.com. No, this ad is about Father's Day itself. It's about honoring my father as a human and a dad, not just the realtor who can find you the best deal in all of the Lowcountry. Last year around this time, I was home in Myrtle Beach for about 2 months. My dad had a very serious surgery, and I went home to be there for that and to help out after. And, it was a really rough, scary time period in all of our lives. But I'm happy to say that this year he's doing much better, back to his old self. I love my dad. I'm very glad he's still with us, almost as glad as his many satisfied real estate clients who are now living their dreams by making a home in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, timbeachrealtor@gmail.com. My whole life, my dad has done what he had to do to support my family. My mom put her teaching career on hold to raise my sister and me. And my dad worked a lot to keep our family afloat. He did what he had to do because that's what, good parents do. Jobs that he didn't love, jobs that didn't satisfy him nearly as much as his current job, timbeachrealtor@gmail.com. My parents are, to this day, people I turn to for love and guidance and support. And the fact that, while I'm on strike from my career as a writer and apparently unable to find a day job to save my life, someone in this family needs to make some money. timbeachrealtor@gmail.com. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you. Please sell some more houses. I'm hungry. timbeachrealtor@gmail.com. And hello, I am Brian T. Arnold, and this is 39-Minute Conversations, a podcast about reconnecting with old friends and making new ones, but I've only got 39 minutes to do it because I will not be paying for Zoom Pro. My guest today rose through the ranks of the TV writers' rooms, from PA to writer's PA to writer's assistant to staff writer and story editor. Her credits include Turner and Hooch and 4400. These days, she is a strike captain, which is a full-time job in and of itself. Please welcome Jackie Penn. Jackie.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you. For context for the listeners, you and I actually met recently for the first time in person at the Boy Meets World picket at CBS Radford, and you were very kind. You made sure I got in a picture with the cast that came out. I was very awkwardly like, oh, do I ask for one? My niece will be so excited. I'm not gonna ask. I'm just gonna. And you were like, no, get in this one. So you made that happen for me. We are. You did, and I appreciate it. We'd already been emailing each other about this podcast before we met. You were referred to me as someone that I should interview, and once we met in person, I was very excited that we already had this scheduled. I am very glad for this opportunity to chat more. So yeah, once again, just thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Most of the time, I do try to start these interviews the same way. This podcast kind of it came out of the pandemic, turning me into a bit of a shut-in. I used to do like improv and sketch comedy and different things, and I'm a shut-in now, so I wanted to do something performative and social from the safety of my own home. So I do want to ask these last few years, how have they been for you? How did you stay sane? How is 2023 Jackie maybe different than, say, 2019 Jackie?
Wow, yeah, I think about that often actually because I think, I would say I'm an extrovert. So
Mm,
I think I'm still an extrovert, but an extrovert that like doesn't do all of the things anymore. And I
sure.
think that has like the pandemic changed that and that part of myself. So I go to things now, but it's kind of more like I guess I'm a little bit more selective. I still am not a huge fan of like very, very crowded things. I think
Hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people kind of are dealing with that from the pandemic. I just get kind of nervous with large crowds of people. I'm still
Hmm.
thinking about possible germs, which I hope one day that I can like not feel that way. But so yeah, I'll go out. I don't do it as much
Hmm.
as I used to. So like I guess I'm just more selective about the things that I'm doing. Socially.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that what kept me sane, honestly, friends, I had text threads that I had with friends, watching a lot of TV,
Hmm.
movies.
Sure.
Um, I wrote a lot. Also, I'm a big reader, so I read a lot as well.
Mm.
And then, worked out at home, which I continue to do. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I
the
went
way.
I went through so many different variations of like working out at home and then eating everything I could find. So it's I definitely, the pandemic was interesting for me in that way. One thing that you mentioned that I just want to, I don't know, it just flashed for me for some reason. I'll get into it. You're a big reader.
Mhm.
Um, I used to be, I would like to be again. I feel like my attention span is gone. And like to this day, I don't know if you've felt this, but like when I've had like general meetings with people, obviously, like it'll be the first, like one of the last things they'll say is like, "Oh, if you ever like read a book or something that like you think would be great, like let us know." So nowadays, when I read a book, like for pleasure, it's like I'm like 10 pages in, and I'm like, "This isn't a movie," and like and like I stop reading it. How do you still? I guess, how can I find pleasure in a book that's outside of work? Like, how do I, like, these two worlds are so combined. How do you do it?
I think for me, because I would say like so hard, reading and TV were both my first loves as
Hmm.
a kid. So I think they just hand in hand. But I think for me, reading was always like a chance to escape. I mean, that's what, writing is also.
Sure.
So I think, when I was an assistant, that's when it was really hard for me to read, right? Like I
Because
was assistant,
you're reading scripts all the time.
trips, doing errands, like,
Hmm.
doing scheduling and all of that kind of stuff. So those are my down years of reading actually. And then once I, got staffed and we had the pandemic, like stay at home, then that kind of like helped me to get back on track. So I just read for pleasure. I just go in
Hmm.
and I don't like I'm just reading to read. So I that would be my advice is just to read and
Hmm.
like if you love the book after, then you could be like, "Oh, maybe this could be a movie or it could be adapted for a TV show." But I think I just go in as like this is a time for me to like recharge, to like
Hmm.
do some self-care. And that's kind of how, like I said, I got through the pandemic. Well, the height of it anyway, like
Yeah.
just kind of separating it from everything else and just
When when you're reading, do you picture actors or do you, because I do. Like I think that's part of the problem is I'll start like casting it in my head and then be like, well, who could play this part? No, there are no 18-year-olds who could open a movie. Close book.
you I don't. I like just
Interesting.
I mean, I'm probably like thinking about who it could be, but like they're usually non-actor people
Mm,
in my head.
hmm.
And then again, like I said, if it's at the end and I'm like, oh, this is really good. Like if this was,
Yeah,
a movie or TV, who could play this part? So
gotcha.
I think it's just, trying to train your brain maybe to shut off that part.
I can try. Is that an Ever After poster behind you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm a huge Drew Barrymore fan. I
Hmm.
also have Never Been Kissed over here.
Nice.
And then Ugly Betty, and you can't see it, but Jane the Virgin. But I love Drew Barrymore. So
She's great. That was like my sister's favorite movie as a kid. I saw it several times. It's very
I've,
good.
I've seen it so many times I can't even tell you. So
It's a great movie, and it's one that I feel like has been kind of I don't know, forgotten. It's like not forgotten, maybe is the wrong word, but it definitely deserves its flowers more. Like it's just a very
Yeah,
good movie. It's a good
it was
adaptation.
so good. And like, I mean, that was like years ago. And it was like a very like well-written script, like
Hmm.
just great acting, and like it's a good movie.
It's a good
Solid.
movie. So everybody listening, watch Ever After.
Watch it.
Um, we're gonna get into strike stuff and more later, which is, obviously how we met. But the first things first, I want to get to know you more as a person and a writer. You are from Youngstown, Ohio. I am from West Virginia originally, so we're kind of neighbors. I know a few people from Youngstown. What was it like growing up there? And yeah, what's just Youngstown like? What's the vibe?
I mean, Youngstown is one of these like, steel mill like cities that kind of like once those closed down, that
Hmm.
kind of like was the big business. So I didn't get to see Youngstown in those like glory days, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
So I think like growing up, Youngstown was still trying to find like the next thing to like, kind of sustain it as a city.
Hmm.
I always think of it as a small a small town. I mean, it's not that small, but like to
About
me,
60,000 people, I think, according
yeah,
to
it's
according to Google's last census on Google.
yeah, so it's small, right? Like
Yeah, pretty
it's
small.
pretty small. Usually people know each other through other people, like which kind of like the industry here. Once you know one person, you know
Yeah,
like many. And I think growing up, I listen, I think Ohio is a great place to grow up.
I
I'm
say the
really
same thing about West Virginia. It's a great place to be from.
yes, to be from. So I'm very appreciative of like, growing up there. But
Hmm.
I knew once I got to high school that I like was gonna have to leave,
Hmm.
especially like, to pursue other things. And, yeah, I have really good memories of growing up there, but again, just small town,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you want to explore and do other things and travel.
Hmm.
For me personally, I have friends who still live there. My family
Sure.
still lives there. But for me, I kind of wanted to like spread my wings. So
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I felt the same growing up. My hometown was similarly like it was a coal and railroad town, so same kind of thing, industry dying. I think my town has like 8 or 9 thousand people in it now and had very like a little bit more when I was there, but not that many more. So like we grew up in kind of a similar place, I think. Were there any shows or movies that you saw when you were a kid, other than maybe Ever After, that you fell in love with and that like made you realize that this is what you wanted to do with your life?
oh man, I think TV had like such an influence on me. I was the kid that like, TGIF was like a staple for me.
Oh, yep.
I used to like plan my like limited social life when I was a kid. And like Friday nights were like sacred. So
Hmm.
I think as a kid, I think those shows, all those shows that came on, kind of really, I don't know, like made an impact on me. And I think that carried over into like high school and college. And I kind of decided to shift to TV writing later, but I
Hmm.
think the foundations of all of that probably stemmed from like me watching like TGIF, and I think
Yeah.
those sensibilities kind of maybe sometimes appear in my writing. So those are probably the ones that I remember the most, like
Hmm.
from early years. But then just a lot over the years, like Ugly Betty. I mean, I was older when Ugly Betty came out, but like
Hmm.
that one was the show that I really thought like, oh, this is kind of like the thing that I would like to do. That was like heartfelt, funny with
Hmm.
drama. Um, yeah.
Um, no, that's great. You mentioned kind of coming to writing later. I do want to get into that. You went to the Ohio State University first as pre-med,
Yes.
then switched to Spanish, then you went to grad school, and I want to get all your credentials right here. You got an MA in Spanish literature, an MED in curriculum and instruction, a BA in journalism, and a minor in English. So my question is, are you by nature an overachiever?
Yes.
Okay.
Overachiever and someone I would say my husband and my friends are always like, it's okay if you like don't do stuff sometimes. So I have to like remind myself, yes, I think, yeah, been this way since I was a kid. So also a nerd and I like
Sure.
learning. So that's also the other part of it too.
So after that, after all that school, you taught Spanish for a while. How long were you teaching?
Let's see, I taught for about 7 years,
Okay.
somewhere around there. Yeah.
So at this point, years in school, good job teaching Spanish. And I want to ask this because it's something that I think I struggled with in my area, in my life. I want to see if it was similar for you. We're from these similar areas, about as far removed from Hollywood as you can be. So for a while, I knew that I wanted to be a writer, and I had no idea how that would even happen. So for a long time, I think I was looking for like maybe this job will make me happy enough. Maybe like I don't have to try to figure out writing if I'm like news will work for me, or I can manage this movie theater or whatever before I finally took the plunge and moved to LA to give it a shot. So is that what was going through your head? Is that what you were thinking about too? Did you already know you want to be a writer? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say, I used to say, oh, I didn't know I wanted to be a writer until later. But then
Hmm.
last summer, when I was visiting my sister in New Orleans, she was like, no, actually, you said you wanted to be a writer when you were 8 and that
Hmm.
you were going to move to Los Angeles. I do not remember this. So she's
Hmm.
like, I'm not surprised this is what you end up doing. So I guess I did know as a little kid. And then along the way, like you said, from Youngstown, like how is that even possible? I loved TV and I loved movies, but I never thought it was something I could do. So I thought I was looking for like a stable job, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of like how I fell into teaching after I decided, organic chemistry was like I just couldn't I just couldn't do it. So yeah, and I think it just took me a little bit of time, but if I go back and look at all the things I was doing before I moved out here, I was already being very creative and doing things. It took me I guess some time to realize that like that was the thing I wanted to do, and I
Hmm.
guess to find some like courage to like go for
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. At
So
what point did you decide to, at what point did you move to LA and say like I have to give this a shot?
it was my last year of teaching, so I had taught at the college level for a little bit just as an adjunct. Then I taught a year at a high school. And then the last grade I taught was seventh grade, and they were adorable. Great age to teach. And it was just during
Really? I
yeah.
think a middle school is the worst time in my life.
Oh no, eighth. Okay. So seventh grade, it's right before the switch, right?
Okay.
So they still really care about like what their parents think, what teachers think. Their kids are still like giving me like that. They're still very like it's the last little, I don't want to say baby, but you know what I mean. That's the
Sure.
last.
But before they turn into little monsters, like while
Well,
they're still kind of children.
the switch it happens in eighth grade, right? So like
Okay.
that's kind of when it happens. So it was a really good age, and I loved working with that age group. But it was like in the middle of that school year where I kind of had this epiphany of like, wait, I really want to pursue, working in television. And
Hmm.
thank goodness my husband was very supportive, and he was like, okay, let's let's figure out how you're going to do this. And yeah, and that's kind of how that all started.
I was gonna ask if you were married out there and came out here with your husband, or if you met him here. That's interesting. That like it's very nice to have that kind of relationship. That's like I have a big change coming, like a big new thing I want to do, and have the other person be like, "Fuck yeah, let's do that!" Like that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and he's been really supportive, and he like how he got out to California is he applied to graduate school. So he was doing a career change too. So we were both doing it at the same time.
Okay.
And that's how we got eventually to Portland, and that's how I got on my first show. And then
Hmm.
that show led to me like getting on a show down here, and then he switched his career again during the during the beginning of the pandemic. So I mean,
So
we're
this
both
is
supportive.
this is both of you. What has been his career path and trajectory? Not that this podcast is about your husband. This is all about you.
Yeah, he before he made his career change, he was in international education. So he was working for UCLA, and then the pandemic happened, and he decided to go into therapy. So
Oh
he's
wow.
working on his license, his hours for his full license. So that's what he's
That's
doing now.
great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your sister said that she knew you were going to be a writer when you were a kid because you were writing and talking about it. Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote? Do you remember like what that was?
No, not the first thing that I ever wrote. The thing that I kind of remember I guess that's has stuck with me is
Mhm.
that when I was in high school, like a freshman year of high school, we had this. I think I was in AP English. Again, it should have all been very clear to me because English is like my favorite subject. Like I don't
Sure.
know how I don't know how I didn't know. One of the assignments we had read To Kill a Mockingbird, and you had the option of like doing like a regular like test, or you could write an essay, or you could do like a creative thing. And I
Mm.
decided to write a journal as Scout, like talking about the book and like journal entries and stuff
Oh,
like
that's
that.
cool. Yeah.
And that was my project, and that has all I always remember that because I had so much fun doing that. Yeah, so like, kudos for that teacher. I had really great teachers that were allowing me to like really explore that creative side. But that's the thing that I still remember, that
Mhm.
project.
At a lot of my listeners, which a lot is of course an overstatement, but my listeners are largely, pre WGA up and coming writers. And so I really want to get into a little bit more about how you got your foot in the door, how you got started in the industry. You started as a PA, you said in Portland. Well, you were PAing in Portland?
I got my first job as a set PA.
So set PA in
On
Portland and then came
yeah.
down here. So, and then you worked your way up from PA got into a writer's room as a PA, writer's assistant all the way. Unfortunately, that path is kind of feels like it's disappearing lately. In the age of mini rooms and shortened seasons, largely brought on by streaming. Obviously, we're trying to negotiate about that, and part of why we're on strike. Can you talk a little bit about that path of yours and why it's so important that it exists for up and coming writers?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's so important. I came in with the mindset of like, I'm gonna have to start at the bottom because I like didn't go to school for film and television.
Sure.
So kind of like new for me personally.
It was the only majors you didn't get. Like out
Right,
of
right, exactly. So, as a set PA, I was able to like really get and understand like how set worked and like the different departments and all of that. And then, I was an office PA and a line producer's assistant. But then becoming a writer's PA, I got to see the other side of things, kind of assisting the writers and like got to sit in the room, like while they were pitching story ideas and like arcs and things like that. And then that really helped me when I became a writer's assistant, just like seeing firsthand kind of how, the sausage is made, I guess is what people would say. But
Mhm.
I had really good writers at that point who were, you know, invested in kind of like interested in what I wanted to do and like kind of could learn from them. And I think it's just super important, that that mentorship, right? And if you don't have an opportunity to kind of like be an apprentice,
Mhm.
so to say, then it kind of like, how are you supposed to like continue to learn and grow? And also as an assistant, I think it was great because I got to like pitch sometimes, and it was before the pressure of being like a staff writer. So like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, just like if you have a great idea, like just we're open to hearing it."
That's
So
nice. Yeah.
kind of like helped me, learn from them how they were pitching, and I kind of like, adapted that to like what I felt was comfortable. So by the time I was a staff writer, I think that really helped me,
Mhm.
those experiences. So I think it's really important that to get your foot in the door to kind of like have these opportunities to learn.
Mhm.
I think it's vital.
Once you became a staff writer, did you get to be on set for your episodes? Because that's also something that's a little bit in contention, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
one of the offers of the NBA negotiation was, oh, you'd bring an unpaid writer down, like an internship kind of thing. Did you get that opportunity?
Unfortunately for Turner and Hooch, I did not
Hmm.
because it was
Streaming.
it's streaming one, but I mean, the intention was for us to go to
Oh,
set,
okay.
but then we were in the heart of like the pandemic, right?
Mm.
And we were shooting in Canada, and at the beginning of the pandemic, their COVID restrictions were very, very, very strict.
Yeah,
So there was only a couple of writers who could go up and cover all the episodes. So I
gotcha.
didn't get to do it for Turner and Hooch, but I did when I was a story editor on 4400. Our showrunners were like adamant about all of us going to set and being able to produce our episode,
That's
which
amazing.
is great.
Yeah.
And we were a CW show, like RIP to CW as we used to
God,
know
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And what I'll say, one of the great losses of the CW, right, is that we had such like diverse programming, and all
Hmm.
the writers who wrote for those shows came up the ranks and they were able to go to set and produce their episodes. So like
Hmm.
it was really like educational for a lot of
Yeah.
writers. So
CW for, in a lot of ways was a training ground that writers don't get a ton anymore.
yeah.
I think, there's still like some scripted stuff on, the networks that'll happen, but it's rarer and rarer. But CW felt like it felt like sort of like a way in for a lot of
Mhm.
writers.
Yes.
You mentioned Turner and Hooch, and this is something that we talked a little bit about on the picket line, and um, something that you've experienced, and I've also had some other guests who've experienced. I haven't talked a ton about it on the podcast yet, but I would love to get into it with you if you're willing. I do think it's kind of an important thing that we're dealing with right now. This first draft writer job, Turner and Hooch, all those episodes were recently pulled from streaming on Disney Plus, alongside a number of other shows and movies that were, taken off of Hulu and Disney Plus. And that's another thing that keeps happening, whether it's for tax write-offs or avoiding residual payments or whatever the reason, we don't really know, at least not publicly, other than the tax write-off thing, is a new practice, and one that really sucks for both viewers and creators. How did you find out that Turner Hooch was being pulled, and what was your reaction?
I found out on like it was on Twitter
Oh,
from like
great.
deadline. So like I found out like everyone else found out,
Hmm.
which was I think is always an awful way to find out like
Yeah.
things. And Disney Plus, like some other shows you can find hopefully on some other streaming service.
Hmm.
Disney Plus shows it's only on Disney
Oh,
Plus. You
yeah.
cannot find it anywhere else.
You're going back in the Disney vault.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a real like, okay, wait. So, like, this show that I worked on is no longer going to exist anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and then it became like, how can I, save my episode for myself?
Hmm.
Because like once it's gone, it's like gone. So there was a lot of like scrambling and figuring out how I could have a copy just so it's like it did exist at one time it was there, which luckily I was able to figure out a way. But yeah, I mean it's awful, right?
Yeah.
Because people look at your credits, right, for like
Hmm.
other jobs, and it's like, well, what was this show? And it's like, well, you can't watch it anymore, but like I did work on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's hard. I'm sorry that happened. Let's talk a little bit about the strike itself. You're serving as a captain. You're out there on the picket lines every day. Just, human to human, this is a lot of, it's a lot. It's a lot emotionally. It's a lot financially. It's a lot physically. So just first of all, how are you holding up during all of this?
Oh, I mean, I guess it depends on the day,
Sure.
right? Like some days I think are better than others. I really feel like coming off of like last week was a really good week.
Mm,
And yeah, I think it's like an ebb and flow, right? And I think what the good thing about this is that there are other people, we're all going through this at the same time, we're all going through
hmm.
this together. So I think it's really like brought us a lot closer. So I
Hmm.
feel like I'm not the only one going through this, so I have a lot of people to talk to about it.
Yeah.
I think the special pickets really really are helpful. I know that there are some people, might be the smaller percentage of people are like,
Yeah.
oh, this should be serious, and like you shouldn't be having fun.
That's
But
just like Aaron Sorkin, and we can ignore him.
right, because it's like, well, listen, this is not, I mean, picketing isn't fun, right?
No.
Not knowing when this is going to end, that's not fun. Like, people were not making money. That is also not fun. So, for us to keep motivated and to continue to like fight, for this, I think we have to be, we're creatives. So we're going to
Hmm.
find ways creatively to kind of like keep our spirits up. And I think all of those things, like those give me, so much like boost of energy. Also, the support we've been having. I know 0708 was a little different, but like I feel like we have so much support
Hmm.
from like so many different avenues. And people just like dropping food off to us, like just all the things that people are doing. that's kind of like what's really getting me through, and I think getting a lot of us through. So yeah.
You mentioned the special pickets, which I think are great. Has there been one or two like, oh, this is the best, like I'm having the best time. This is like this was for me feeling almost.
Okay, so there's like FOMO, right? Because I'm at Warner Brothers most of the time. Sometimes I
Yeah.
get to sneak out and like go to other lots for like the Boy Meets World, which
Right.
loved
Was
because
great. It was great.
great TGI IF fan. I loved it. So that, and like I got to go to Bay Day at like, for Beyonce at Radford. Then they had a CW like WB Pickett at Warner Brothers, like all of the
Hmm.
shows that I like grew up watching. And then I got to do be a co-organizer for the NoHo stripper takeover, and I'm a pole dancer, and not a stripper, but pole dance wouldn't be what it is without
Obviously, yeah.
you know. And I was so happy to like let them be involved, and they had their own labor fight that was like
Hmm.
13 months long. So that was really fun to be able to bring both parts of myself, like, I pole dance and I write, so like it was great to have them. And they're very inspirational too,
Hmm.
and they were giving us like words of wisdom, and like also trying to like lift our spirits. But yeah, I just love it all. Like those are the ones I'm highlighting, but the ones I continue to see, I think everyone's just being so creative. Like they all seem like I wish I could go to all of them.
Yeah. I recently signed up to be a captain myself. I haven't done my first shift yet.
Ooh,
What can I expect? What is my day gonna look like? Walk me through it.
okay.
Don't scare me too much.
I will not scare you. I think, I'm at Warner Brothers, but I'm just, all the lots have great teams, but like usually I'm a morning captain, so I try to get there by 8:45 just to kind of like check in with our lot coordinators, kind of talk about like what are the special pickets today, like, you know, get that, like, are we having any food trucks that are coming, any donations, things like that. So kind of getting the lay of the land.
Hmm.
And then, I choose my sign, which is like, listen, I feel like the sign is a mood. It sets the mood, right? So you like try to get there and pick your
Oh
sign.
yeah, very important.
Very, very important. And then usually, sometimes we're taking new picketers or who haven't been to that particular lot. We take them down. I'm at gate 2-3, which is like the bigger lot, the bigger gate at
Hmm.
Warner Brothers. And then, we go down there, we unload our truck basically with our like, our snack table, our cones to kind of, we do cones at Warner Brothers to kind of help
Hmm.
guide people what our route is.
It's a big lot. It can be confusing.
Yeah, to like pick it. And then it's just like, answering questions for people. Again, if people haven't been to gate 2-3, want to know where the restrooms are, like, things like that. Sometimes it's like helping, maybe if we have a food truck, helping them get set up. Like, we had on Friday, we had Abbott Elementary and had the teachers union was there and nurses, and they wanted to do like some speeches. So it was kind of like organizing that with them. So it's kind of like uh, everything, like whatever you're just there to help facilitate. You're there to
Yeah.
help answer questions, also to make sure people are like crossing the street in timely manner, like,
Hmm.
not blocking things. Because we also, while we're there and we're there for, our reason, like to pick it, we also want to make sure that we're like, don't give the studios a reason to like let us not pick it there.
Right.
So yeah, just kind of there, and making sure everyone knows like, how we're supposed to be picketing, things like that. But
Hmm.
yeah, and I feel like you'll have other captains there and they'll support you, and it can also be fun. You meet lots of people,
Yeah.
which I think is great. Yeah.
I guess I like meeting people.
Yeah.
On your website, you say that your trademark is that you always wear a flower in your hair, as you are right now. And you
Yeah.
said that there's a story behind it that you're happy to share. I don't know when else I'm going to get this opportunity.
Yes.
Please, I would love to know.
So back in like 2014, I used to like wear my hair chemically straightened, and I decided not to do that anymore for various reasons. And I
Sure.
cut off my hair off, and it was really, really short, like the
Hmm.
teeniest, teeniest little afro. And I was very self-conscious about it.
Hmm.
And a friend said, well, why don't you wear like a little flower? And I started doing that, and it's just become part of me. Like, I really liked it. It used to be like a smaller flower before, and now I like kind of really love plumerias, and it's been a plumeria for the past like 7 years. So I
Oh,
have
wow.
lots of plumeria colors, and I like, try to accessorize based on what I'm colors I'm wearing. And yeah, so people like recognize me on the
Sure.
because sometimes I have the captain hat on, and we're all like dressed out in like active wear, so they like, oh, I recognize you, flower in your hair. So I mean, it's kind of like part of me now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's cool. It's good to have a trademark. I need to work on one. I need to figure it out. Is it always a real, like, is it a real flower or do you have?
I wish it was a real flower, but
Okay,
it's like a little,
sure.
I don't know what the material is, but it's on a little bobby pin. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, just checking. But either way, lovely and good to know. Um, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned in pursuing this career to up till now?
Ooh, I think, wow. To be flexible, right?
Hmm.
I think, you can have an idea of what you think your career might look like, or like what opportunities will come to you. But I think being flexible and open, I think is really important in our industry and in our profession. And just knowing that, like, maybe you don't get on the show you think that you should be on, and you wind up on something that's actually better for you. So
Hmm.
just being open and flexible, you can learn from anywhere. So I think just being open to that. Yeah.
As someone, you say on your website that you like to write female focused stories. I wrote down what exactly you said. I've forgotten it. Fish out of water, female driven. But what's it like you just kind of alluded to, what's it like kind of adapting your voice to somebody else's room? Because that's not something I'm mostly a feature writer. I come from sketch a little bit, but that's not something I've experienced before. What's it like having to sort of adapt to someone else's voice and room?
I think you kind of like, you go in and you like hear what their vision is. So you're always trying to serve the journey that they have for these characters. So I think, yeah, you just try to get on board with that and go, okay, like maybe if this was, you can't even go like, oh, if this is my show. Like, no, this is the character.
Hmm.
This is the journey we want to take them on. So I think just kind of really buying into that you're there to like, get those characters to like the end goal basically. And it's just fun, some of those characters, I feel like when you talk about them in the room, you get to really know them very well. So it seems like it would be hard, but like as you continue to talk and break story, I think it becomes easier. Yeah.
We have about 2 minutes left, a little under. So I want to give you this opportunity before we move on to the last round of questions where we get to know each other on an even deeper level, get to know your soul. I want to give you this opportunity to, where can people follow you? Is there anything that you want to plug, et cetera, et cetera?
I am on all the socials.
Hmm.
I'm mainly on Twitter. I think it's Jackie Penn 18 on Twitter, and then on,
I'll put it in the
okay,
description.
great. And then on Instagram, I think it's JL Penn 18. I'm
Okay.
on Facebook. I tend to like keep Facebook for like
Sure. We don't even, yeah.
friends, but yeah, that's where you'll find me. I'm like on Twitter a lot, especially for the strikes. I'm always on.
Okay, so with our remaining time, this is when we get into sort of the deeper, more philosophical questions of life. And so, Jackie, I want to know, what do you think happens after we die?
Oh, wow, that's question. Um, I don't know.
Hmm.
Hopefully I don't know. I would love to come back as like reincarnation, maybe someone's guardian angel. I
Hmm.
don't know. That's what I that's what I think will happen. I get to come back,
You're
hopefully.
such an overachiever that you want your afterlife to be a job. You're being assigned guardian angel. Um, when you do pass away from this earth, as we all eventually do, what do you want people to say about you?
I want to, besides being a hard worker, that, I was someone who led with kindness and tried to you know, um, leave the world better than it was, and that
Hmm.
I tried to help people. So
Your meeting has ended. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to 39-Minute Conversations, hosted and produced by Brian T. Arnold. Music by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and tune in for new episodes, and don't forget to rate and review. If you didn't like what you heard, please don't do any of that. That's okay too. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and be well.